I don't, is this a real county? I'm probably going to butcher this name, but The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Mark Twain. I don't know how off I am on that.
It could be real. I don't know. I didn't look it up.
Let's just jump right into this. See what I did there?
How many times are you going to say jump in this video?
The unnamed narrator visits Simon Wheeler to ask about a man named Leonidas W. Smiley. Wheeler, however, launches into a long, humorous monologue about Jim Smiley, a man addicted to gambling who would bet on anything. So first, we have to open up with the discussion on, okay, we have a framed narrative. Our true narrator is this unnamed narrator who's asking about Leonidas. But we, via proxy of Simon Wheeler and asking him, get launched into this central framed story about Jim Smiley, not even the person we were freaking asking about. Like, first of all, it was kind of hilarious because the entire time I was assuming we were going to get back to why Jim was actually Leonidas Smiley, and it never happened.
It is a little bit confusing, but I do like the setup, and the setting itself almost feels like a character with the rustic Western setting. And I felt that Twain was really kind of playing it up, of trying to be hammy with it, of how sensationalized the West is in, the nickel and dime novels. And, the idea of Western is becoming a thing in American culture, not quite to the level of idolizing like cowboys and gunslingers yet, but I think he can see the writing on the wall that is coming.
It's this complete deadpan delivery of a wild, crazy ride, right? And this was this 60s when this was released? I think this was post Gold Rush, right? If I have my timelines correct. And, America was filled with all these narratives, all these potentials, these hopes, these chases for truth and wealth. And this kind of created this storytelling art for a lot of the West and South in American culture, right? And to your exact point, you get this sense of this deadpan delivery playing with that from a Mark Twain perspective, where he's almost, I don't want to say satirizing it, but there is an element of him kind of poking fun at that guy that tells these crazy, wacky stories.
And he does it in a very sensationalized way. Yeah, this comes out in 1865, and the Wild West is just about to become a thing as more people, making their way out west. The gold rush is long over, but there's other exploration out there. And Twain does a great job of making fun of ourselves. Americans are seen as simple. The writing in this is very, very simple. We're seen as long-winded. There's a lot of run-on sentences in here. That just the structure of the story itself, I think, is Mark Twain at his best. And then the humor thrown on top of that, it adds another layer of authenticity, I think, that what he was trying to get across to his audience at the time. And we can learn a lot from that in this day and age of sometimes you're laughing with yourself while people are laughing at you. It doesn't feel so negative.
No, I totally know what you're saying there. And I want to make a comparison here. Let me go through the next part of the story, and then we'll come back to this. So Wheeler's story, it centers on this Smiley's trained frog, Daniel Webster. And again, like we talked about, like the Wild West becoming a thing post Gold Rush, you have this dialect, this vernacular that is evolving too, right? We are, the further west you go from the East Coast, which is more closely associated with its roots in European history, right? You start to get more of an identity and more of a difference in identity and culture as you head out west. And Twain really embraces that through this story. So Daniel Webster, it's this frog that he spent like 3 months or something like that, training him to jump on command and such.
Yeah.
To the point where he can like race any frog, and like, Mr. Smiley being the big better will race anyone, right? So he meets the stranger. Stranger's like, well, I don't have a frog. So, well, I'll go get you a frog. So he goes and gets a frog. While he's gone, the stranger fills the frog up with buckshot, right? So the little beads used in like shotguns and such for hunting, fills the frog up. So that way when the Smiley comes back with the stranger's frog, when they race, the Daniel Webster won't jump, right? He's just filled with shotgun. And afterwards, he loses the bet, and he realizes afterwards when the frog's 5 pounds heavier, what had happened. So this is a very common theme in literature, and I don't explore it too much because I don't know. It hasn't resonated with me too much, but tricking the trickster, right? Like that is something that American audiences have really gravitated to. And what I want to draw the comparison to my earlier point, is writing decades later. You have William Faulkner, and we've had a lot of enjoyment with his writings. And can't you see some of those similarities there with the strong vernacular, the art of storytelling, right? Not for the purpose necessarily of anything else other than entertainment, as opposed to conveying some morality in a story. That's what is happening here with Simon Wheeler. He's telling this crazy, entertaining story. Oh, you gotta come here. You gotta hear the story, because the commodity of the South and the West wasn't necessarily just money and time the way that it was in the North and the East, right? It was relationships. It was ownership of the land or the resources, or something unique like a frog here. It's the way that became more embraced in that part of the culture, as opposed to the money and the time restraints in the East and North. I really enjoyed that, and I think there's a lot of similarities with that we've explored with like William Faulkner as well.
Yeah, I didn't go quite down the literary route, but I thought as I read this story how, to me, it related a lot to a couple of movies, and the zany wackiness of it, the absurdity of it. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I thought was very, very similar to this. And also the movie Big Fish, where just they tell these tall tales, like Paul Bunyan type tales, and they get more zany, more wacky, more ridiculous. And I felt like Twain here is just kind of poking fun of the Americans of like, you guys will believe anything about what happens out West. Communication, 1865, telegraph is still new. There's no phones yet. There's no internet. None of those things exist. People wholeheartedly, 100% eat it up as true fact in these dime novels, in the newspapers, letters, people that are writing them, of all this crazy stuff happening out West. And they love it too. They want to be gullible. And I think that a story like this, Twain is just saying, do you guys really believe this stuff? Well, I mean, if you do, no offense, but eventually you have to start having some critical thinking skills and just can't take anything verbatim when you read something. And I like that. I think it's a good lesson then and a good lesson now.
I think you're spot on. Like that just feels so accurate on various levels, because part of why did you want to believe those outside stories? Why did you want to believe there's gold hidden in the mountains, or that there was a secret demon in this cave around the corner? I think it's like that outside chance and competitiveness that a lot of Americans had, that the first to discover, the first to push and really become something, was the one that became famous, right? And in terms of tricking the trickster vibe that we kind of have in the story, and a lot of great American storytellers, is how you could use that deception and the gullibility of people to lure them into the traps to better yourself, even, I think, is kind of where I see how that was being played out, right? Like how people were being tricked and lured into, what's the saying? When there's a gold rush, you should sell shovels, I think is the phrase, right? Like,
yeah.
Like that's the American ideal of how to get ahead, right? And I love the way that it kind of plays out in the story.
I also like how Twain isn't malicious here. The trickster is, he has his comeuppance, but it's not cruel, it's not mean, and even like those movies, and I think that's one thing that makes it, like a family movie or a family story, and why it's so popular is there is a good lesson to learn here. Like, you could read this with your son, and you could have a very teachable moment of, here's a lesson: you don't try to get things over on anybody because something may happen to you. And it's not like he's killed or his right hand is chopped off or he's thrown in jail or anything really bad happens to him, but there is a sense of being penalized for trying to be a shady type character. And I really like that message as well.
I think it's also, so like to wrap it up, because I kind of wonder like why the frame narrative. I always ask that question, like whenever we have one of these stories, I'm always going to ask this question, like why do that? And you have the guy that's just fed up and like kind of like wait, like he just kind of leaves. And the guy's like, oh, wait, let me tell you another story about this. I forget what the other story was, but it was something ridiculous, right? Like, I'm going to say that it wasn't this, but I'm going to say the term like purple cow, right? Like the thing that you never see. He's trying to lure him back in.
Yeah.
And to me, this is on some level a failure for, there's probably a term for this person. Like, cause you remember when we had again, years later, the Civil War being rebuilt, you had the Northerners, they called them carpetbaggers, that were coming down to try to take advantage of the South and the rebuild and the money that was going in to restore the South after the war. I kind of took this as, I don't know what the phrase is for this guy that was coming in with a specific mission into this area, I assume that he's foreign to, and he's unable to integrate into the local folklore, the rowdy raconteur of the locality, wanting to tell them the story and lure them into these really interesting stories that we have of this crazy guy that would bet on anything with this jumping frog, and he won't have any of that, right? It's this failure to integrate into that culture for why he's ultimately going to be an outsider and ultimately kind of shunned from this type of society, because his commodity is time and not the commodity of communion and companionship that the West and the South were kind of forged upon. Again, a very literary way of looking at it, but I don't know, when I hear Twain write these poems, this is just how I feel like he's interacting with American society, as he's looking at these juxtapositions that we have and these stories and what purpose do they serve. And I think he kind of plays with it. And I greatly enjoy not just the story itself, but the commentary of the story on society.
Yeah. To answer your question, the term I would think, if somebody is gullible enough to fall for the con man twice, you're a fool. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is a fun little story that has a lot of teachable moments.
So the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County, whether I pronounced that terrible or not, I don't know, by Mark Twain. We're going to leave a Mark Twain playlist down below. Let us know what your takeaways were from this story. If you aren't sure what to add, but you enjoyed the conversation, please feel free to leave a frog emoji. It helps the ever-hungry YouTube algorithm know that you enjoyed the story, hence why you're still here. Thank you for spending time with us today. My name is Una. Peace.
Peace. Ribbit.